Twin baby bears beg American woman to save their trapped mother. She was on the verge of collapse. The air in the Cascade Mountains was sharp and cold that October morning, carrying with it the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Sarah Mitchell had driven 3 hours from Seattle to hike the Skyline Trail, seeking solitude after a brutal month at work. Her boots crunched over fallen leaves as she moved deeper into the forest, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. She had always found peace here, among the towering Douglas firs and the distant cry of hawks circling overhead. She was 2 miles into the trail when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Not the rustle of wind through branches or the chatter of squirrels. This was different, high-pitched, desperate, almost like crying. Sarah stopped, pulling her earbuds out. The sound came again, clearer now. 2 distinct voices, small and urgent, echoing through the trees to her left. Her heart quickened. She knew these mountains could be dangerous, but something in that sound pulled at her chest, an instinct older than logic. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and stay with us. She stepped off the trail, carefully navigating through thick underbrush and over moss-covered logs. The crying grew louder, more insistent. Then she saw them. 2 bear cubs, no more than 6 months old, stood at the edge of a steep ravine. Their brown fur was matted and dirty, their small bodies trembling. When they saw Sarah, they didn't run. Instead, they turned toward her, and what happened next would stay with her for the rest of her life. The cubs moved toward her, not aggressively, but with purpose. One of them reached up with its front paws, almost like a child begging. The other made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and a cry, then turned back toward the ravine, looking down into the darkness below. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She approached slowly, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The cubs didn't retreat. Instead, they seemed to grow more animated, one of them pawing at the ground, the other turning circles between Sarah and the edge of the ravine. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "What are you trying to show me?" She moved closer to the edge and looked down. Her stomach dropped. 15 feet below, wedged between 2 massive boulders and a tangle of fallen logs, was an adult black bear. Even from this distance, Sarah could see the mother bear's labored breathing, the way her body sagged against the rocks. One of her hind legs was twisted at an unnatural angle, trapped beneath a log. The bear's eyes were half closed, her muzzle caked with dried blood and dirt. "Oh my God!" Sarah breathed. The cubs cried out again, and this time Sarah understood. They had been trying to get help. They had been waiting here, watching their mother slowly dying. And when Sarah came close enough, they had done the only thing they could think of. They had begged. Sarah's mind raced. She was alone, miles from the nearest ranger station, with no cell signal. The mother bear was massive, probably 300 pounds, and clearly injured badly enough that she couldn't free herself. Even if Sarah wanted to help directly, approaching an injured bear, especially a mother with cubs nearby, was suicide. But those cubs, she looked at them now, really looked at them. Their eyes were dark and frightened, their small bodies shaking not just from cold, but from exhaustion and fear. How long had they been here? How long had they watched their mother suffer? One of the cubs approached Sarah again, this time close enough that she could have reached out and touched it. It sat down in front of her, raised both front paws, and made a sound that tore through Sarah's chest like a knife. It was pleading. It was begging her to do something, anything. Sarah knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know if I can help," she whispered. "I don't know how." The cub stared at her with eyes that seemed far too human, far too aware. Sarah pulled her phone from her jacket pocket. No signal, as expected. She stood, looking around desperately. The ravine was steep, but not vertical. There might be a way down, but it would be dangerous. And even if she could reach the mother bear, what then? She had no tools, no expertise, no way to move that log or free the trapped leg. But she had to try something. She couldn't leave them here. She couldn't walk away from those cubs, couldn't leave that mother to die slowly while her babies watched helplessly. Sarah made a decision. She took off her backpack and pulled out her water bottle, energy bars, and a small first aid kit. Everything she had. She looked at the cubs. "Stay here," she said firmly, knowing they couldn't understand her words, but hoping they might understand her tone. "I'm going to try to get down there." She moved along the edge of the ravine, searching for the safest descent. 50 feet to the left, she found a section where smaller rocks and exposed roots created a kind of natural staircase. It was still dangerous, still steep, but it was possible. Sarah began to climb down. The rocks were slick with moisture and loose soil. Twice she nearly lost her footing, grabbing onto roots at the last second. Her heart hammered in her chest as she descended, inch by careful inch. The cubs watched from above, silent now, as if holding their breath. Finally, Sarah's boots touched the bottom of the ravine. She stood there for a moment, catching her breath, then turned toward the mother bear. Up close, the animal looked even worse. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. Blood had dried along her side where the rough bark of the log had scraped her skin. Her trapped leg was swollen, the fur matted with dirt, and what might have been infection starting to set in. Sarah approached slowly, speaking in a low, calm voice. "Hey there, Mama Bear. I'm here to help. I know you're scared. I know you're in pain. But I need you to stay calm, okay? I need you to let me try." The bear's eyes flickered open. For a moment, Sarah thought she might try to attack, might gather the last of her strength to protect herself. But instead, the bear just looked at her. A long, exhausted look that seemed to say, "Please." Sarah moved closer, examining the situation. The log was massive, probably 200 pounds, wedged at an angle that pinned the bear's leg against one of the boulders. There was no way Sarah could lift it alone. But maybe she could lever it. She looked around frantically and found a sturdy branch, about 4 feet long. She positioned one end under the log and found a smaller rock to use as a fulcrum. "Okay, Mama," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "This is going to hurt, but I need you to trust me." She pushed down on the branch with all her weight. The log shifted slightly. The bear let out a low groan. Sarah pushed harder, her muscles screaming, sweat running down her face despite the cold air. The log moved another inch, then another, and then, suddenly, it rolled free. The mother bear's leg came free with a sickening scrape against stone. She collapsed completely, her massive body going limp, as if every ounce of strength had been poured into simply enduring the pain. Her breathing became even more labored, rapid and shallow. Sarah dropped the branch and stumbled backward, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was, alone at the bottom of a ravine with an injured wild animal. But the bear didn't move toward her. She simply lay there, her eyes closing, her chest rising and falling in an irregular rhythm that terrified Sarah more than any aggression could have. "No, no, no," Sarah whispered, moving closer again. "Don't give up now. Come on, Mama. Your babies need you." She knelt beside the bear, her hands hovering over the injured leg. It was badly swollen, possibly broken, and the skin beneath the fur was hot to the touch, definitely infected. Sarah opened her small first aid kit, knowing how inadequate it was. A few bandages, antiseptic wipes, some pain relievers meant for humans. Nothing that could truly help an animal this size, this badly hurt. But she had to do something. From above, the cubs cried out again. Sarah looked up and saw them peering over the edge, their small faces desperate with worry. Something about their helplessness reminded her of another time, another place where she'd felt this same crushing weight of responsibility. 3 years ago, the memory crashed over her like a wave. Her younger brother Daniel had overdosed in his apartment in Portland. Sarah had been the one to find him. She'd called 911, performed CPR, begged him to hold on while the ambulance screamed through city streets. But she'd been too late. The paramedics had tried for 20 minutes, but Daniel was gone. The guilt had eaten at her for months afterward. All the signs she'd missed. All the times she'd been too busy with work to return his calls. The last conversation they'd had, where he'd said he was struggling and she'd promised to visit soon, a promise she never kept. Sarah had thrown herself into her career after that, working 70-hour weeks as a software engineer, filling every moment so she wouldn't have to think about the brother she'd failed to save. But the wilderness, these mountains, had been the only place where the guilt quieted, where she could breathe without feeling like she was drowning. And now, kneeling beside this dying mother bear while her cubs watched from above, Sarah felt that same terrible powerlessness, the same fear that she wasn't enough, couldn't do enough, would fail again. "Not this time," she said aloud, her voice stronger now. "Not this time." She poured water from her bottle onto the antiseptic wipes and began carefully cleaning the wounds on the bear's leg and side. The mother bear flinched but didn't pull away, as if some instinct told her that Sarah was trying to help. Sarah worked methodically, talking in a low, steady voice the entire time. "I know it hurts. I know you're scared. But you're strong, Mama. You've kept your babies alive this long. You've got to hold on a little longer." She pulled out her phone again. Still no signal. She was going to have to climb back up and hike out to get help. But that would take hours, maybe 3 or 4 round trip to reach a ranger station and return with professionals who had the equipment and expertise to handle this properly. Could the mother bear survive that long? Sarah looked at the animal's face. The bear's eyes were open now, watching her with an expression that seemed almost aware, almost grateful. It was impossible, Sarah knew, anthropomorphizing a wild animal. But in that moment she could have sworn the bear understood. "I have to go get help," Sarah said softly. "But I'm coming back. I promise you, I'm coming back." She gathered her things and began the difficult climb back up the ravine. Her muscles ached, her hands were scratched and bleeding from grabbing rough stones, but she pushed through. When she reached the top, both cubs immediately rushed to her. They didn't attack or flee. Instead, they circled around her feet, making soft chirping sounds that broke Sarah's heart. One of them, the slightly smaller of the two, pressed against her leg, as if trying to keep her from leaving. "I have to go," Sarah told them, tears streaming down her face again. "I have to get help for your mama. But I need you to stay here with her, okay? Stay with her. Keep her warm. I'll be back as soon as I can." The cubs seemed to sense her urgency. They backed away slowly, then returned to their position at the edge of the ravine, looking down at their mother. Sarah started running. She ran harder than she'd ever run in her life, her backpack bouncing against her spine, her lungs burning in the cold air. The trail seemed endless. Every minute felt like an hour. She kept seeing those cubs' faces, kept hearing the mother bear's labored breathing. After 45 minutes of brutal running mixed with fast hiking, Sarah's phone suddenly buzzed. 1 bar of signal. She immediately dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "I'm on Skyline Trail in the Cascades," Sarah gasped out between breaths. "About 2 miles in, there's a ravine off the main path to the west. A mother black bear is trapped and badly injured. She has 2 cubs. She's been there for at least a day, maybe longer. She needs immediate help." There was a brief pause. "Ma'am, are you safe? Are the bears threatening you?" "No, they're not threatening anyone. The mother is dying. Her leg was trapped under a log. I freed it, but she's hurt badly. Possible broken bone, definitely infected. She can't move. Her cubs, they came to me for help. Please, you have to send someone." Another pause. Sarah could hear keyboard clicking in the background. "We're contacting the park rangers and wildlife services now. Ma'am, I need you to proceed to the trailhead and wait there for the rangers. Do not return to the bear. You've done what you can, but approaching an injured bear is extremely dangerous." "I have to go back," Sarah said. "I promised them." "Ma'am," Sarah hung up. She knew she should listen to the dispatcher. She knew returning was reckless, but she'd made a promise to those cubs, to that mother bear. And unlike 3 years ago, when she'd promised her brother she'd be there soon, this time she was going to keep her word. She marked the spot on her phone's GPS, then continued running toward the trailhead. 20 minutes later, she reached the parking area. A park ranger's truck was already there. They must have been in the area. Sarah ran toward it, waving her arms. 2 rangers emerged, a man and a woman, both in their 40s with the weathered look of people who spent their lives outdoors. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" the woman asked. "Yes, the bear. She's still there. We have to hurry." "We've called in wildlife services," the male ranger said. "They're bringing tranquilizers and transport equipment, but it's going to take them at least 90 minutes to arrive." 90 minutes? Sarah's voice cracked. She might not have 90 minutes. The female ranger stepped closer. her expression compassionate but firm. "I'm Ranger Chen. This is Ranger Morrison. We understand your concern, but we have protocols. An injured mother bear with cubs is one of the most dangerous situations in the wild. We can't risk civilian lives." "Her cubs came to me," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "They begged me to help. They've been watching their mother die. I can't leave them alone again." Something in Sarah's face must have convinced them. Ranger Chen and Morrison exchanged a look. "All right," Chen said finally. "You can lead us to the location. But you stay back when we assess the situation. Understood?" Sarah nodded. They gathered emergency veterinary supplies from the truck, more comprehensive than Sarah's tiny first aid kit, and began the hike back. Sarah led the way, moving fast despite her exhaustion. The Rangers kept pace, their radios crackling with updates from the Wildlife Services team en route. As they approached the ravine, Sarah heard the cubs before she saw them. Their crying was weaker now, more desperate. Her heart clenched. She broke into a run for the final 100 yards. When she reached the edge and looked down, her worst fear was confirmed. The mother bear had deteriorated even more. She was barely breathing, her body completely still except for the shallow rise and fall of her ribs. The cubs were pressed against each other at the edge, looking down at their mother. When they saw Sarah, they cried out, and this time Sarah understood the sound completely. It was hope. Ranger Chen moved to the edge and assessed the ravine with practiced eyes, her jaw tightening. "That's a difficult descent. Morrison, Radio Wildlife Services. Tell them we need the aerial team on standby if possible." Morrison stepped away, speaking urgently into his radio. Chen turned to Sarah. "You climbed down there alone?" "I had to." "And you moved that log?" Chen pointed at the massive piece of timber lying beside the mother bear. "I used a lever, a branch, and a rock." "What?" Chen studied Sarah for a long moment, something like respect flickering across her face. "That took guts, and probably saved her life, at least temporarily. But we're dealing with severe trauma here. Broken leg, possible internal injuries, infection setting in. Even if we stabilize her, the question is whether she can survive long enough for proper treatment." One of the cubs approached Sarah again, pressing its small body against her leg. She reached down instinctively, her fingers just barely brushing the top of its head. The cub didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned into her touch, making a soft sound that was almost like a purr. "Jesus," Chen breathed. "I've never seen wild cubs act like this. They're usually terrified of humans." "They're desperate," Sarah said quietly. "They know she's dying." Morrison returned, his expression grim. "Wildlife Services is 40 minutes out. They're bringing Dr. Patel. She's their best with bears. But they said—" He hesitated, glancing at Sarah. "What?" Sarah demanded. "They said to prepare for the possibility of euthanasia. If the mother's suffering is too severe, if there's no realistic chance of recovery, the most humane option might be to let her go." "No?" The word came out of Sarah like a gunshot. "No. Those cubs need her. We haven't even tried to save her yet." "Ms. Mitchell," Morrison said gently, "I understand your emotional investment here, but wildlife management isn't about what we want. It's about what's best for the animal. Sometimes preventing suffering means—" "I know what it means." Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp. "I know exactly what it means. But she's still fighting. Look at her. She's still breathing. She held on this long for them." She gestured to the cubs. "The least we can do is give her a real chance." Chen placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We'll do everything we can. I promise you that. But you need to be realistic about the outcome here." Sarah pulled away, moving closer to the edge. The mother bear's eyes were closed now, her breathing so shallow it was barely visible. How long had she been trapped? Sarah had assumed a day, maybe 2. But looking at the condition of the cubs, thin, exhausted, their coats dull, it might have been longer. "How long can bear cubs survive without their mother?" Sarah asked. "At 6 months?" Chen said. "Not long. They're not weaned yet. They don't have the skills to hunt properly or find adequate shelter. If she dies, we'd have to capture the cubs and take them to a rehabilitation facility. They'd spend at least a year in captivity, learning survival skills before we could consider releasing them." If you could release them at all, Morrison added quietly. Sarah looked at the cubs. They were watching her with those dark, intelligent eyes. The smaller one was still pressed against her leg. The larger one sat at the edge of the ravine, alternating between looking down at their mother and back at the humans, as if checking whether help was really coming. "Can we get down there?" Sarah asked. "Can we at least stabilize her while we wait?" Chen considered this, then nodded slowly. "All right. Morrison, get the emergency veterinary kit and the rescue rope. We'll set up a secure line and go down together. Ms. Mitchell, you stay up here with the cubs." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I'm going down. She knows me. I was the one who freed her. She'll be calmer if I'm there." "That's not—" "Please," Sarah interrupted. "I know it's against protocol. I know it's risky. But I can help. I work well under pressure. I follow instructions. And that bear has already let me touch her once. Let me do this." Chen and Morrison exchanged another look. Finally, Chen sighed. "Against my better judgment, all right. But you do exactly what I say, when I say it. One wrong move with an injured bear, and we all die down there. Clear?" "Crystal clear." They worked quickly, setting up a rope system that would allow them to descend safely and haul up equipment. Morrison stayed at the top to manage the lines and keep watch on the cubs. Chen and Sarah descended together, carrying medical supplies in secure packs. The climb down was easier with proper equipment, but Sarah's muscles still screamed in protest. This was her second descent in less than 2 hours. When they reached the bottom, Chen immediately moved into professional mode, approaching the mother bear with careful, measured movements. "Mama bear," Chen said in a low, calm voice, "we're here to help. Stay still for us." She knelt beside the animal, pulling out a stethoscope and pressing it against the bear's chest. Her expression grew more troubled as she listened. Heart rate is weak and irregular. Breathing is labored. Possible fluid in the lungs. The leg is definitely broken, probably in multiple places. She moved her hands carefully along the bear's body, palpating gently. Significant swelling in the abdomen. Could be internal bleeding or organ damage from the initial fall. Sarah felt her hope crumbling. "But she can survive, right? With proper treatment?" Chen didn't answer immediately. She continued her examination, carefully checking the bear's eyes, mouth, and the infected wounds. Finally, she sat back on her heels. "Honestly? I don't know. This is beyond field stabilization. She needs surgery, IV fluids, antibiotics, possibly blood transfusion. And all of that is assuming she doesn't have internal injuries that are too severe to repair." She looked up at Sarah. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be realistic. The odds aren't good. But there's a chance? There's always a chance." Sarah moved closer to the bear's head. Those eyes opened again, looking directly at her. In that gaze, Sarah saw something she recognized. Not just pain and exhaustion, but fierce determination. This bear wasn't ready to give up. She was fighting for every breath, holding on for her babies. "She wants to live," Sarah whispered. "She's not giving up." "Animals don't understand the concept of giving up," Chen said, but her voice was gentler now. "They just keep fighting until they can't anymore. That's both their strength and their tragedy." From above, Morrison's voice called down. "Dr. Patel just radioed. She's 20 minutes out. She wants to know the bear's current status." Chen pulled out a small radio. "Tell her we have a mature female black bear, approximately 300 pounds, with compound fracture of the right hind leg, multiple lacerations and contusions, signs of infection, possible internal injuries, and fluid in the lungs. She's conscious but severely weakened. Vital signs are poor but stable for now." There was a crackle of static. Then a woman's voice came through, clipped and professional. "Has she shown any aggression?" Chen looked at the bear, then at Sarah. "Negative. She's been remarkably docile given the circumstances." "Good. That might mean she's too weak to be a threat, or it might mean she understands you're trying to help. Either way, keep someone monitoring her constantly. I'm bringing tranquilizers, but given her weakened state, I'm hesitant to use them unless absolutely necessary. Start an IV if you can. She needs fluids immediately. I'll have the trauma kit ready when I arrive." "Copy that." Chen turned to Sarah. "Have you ever started an IV?" No, but I can hold her still if you need me to. I'll need you to do more than that. I need you to talk to her. Keep her calm. Animals respond to tone and energy. If you panic, she'll panic. If you're calm and confident, it might help her stay relaxed. Can you do that? Sarah nodded. She moved closer to the bear's head, kneeling in the dirt and rocks. She began to speak, her voice low and steady. Hey, Mama. My name is Sarah. I know you're in pain. I know you're scared. But help is coming. There's a doctor on the way, someone who knows how to fix you. You just have to hold on a little longer. Your babies are up there waiting for you. They're so brave, just like you. They didn't leave you. They stayed right by your side, and when they saw me, they asked for help. They knew you needed someone, and they trusted me to find you. So now I'm asking you to trust me too. Trust all of us. We're going to do everything we can to bring you back to them. As Sarah spoke, Chen worked quickly and efficiently, finding a vein in the bear's front leg and inserting an IV line. The bear flinched but didn't pull away. Chen attached a bag of saline solution to the line and secured it. Good, she murmured. That's good. Sarah, keep talking. Sarah continued, her voice becoming almost rhythmic, like a lullaby. She talked about the cubs, about how beautiful the forest was, about anything and everything that came to mind. And as she spoke, she reached out slowly and rested her hand on the bear's head, just between her ears. The bear's eyes met hers again, and Sarah could have sworn, though she knew it was impossible, knew it was just her own desperate hope, that the bear's breathing steadied slightly, that some of the tension left her massive body. That's it, Sarah whispered. You're doing so well. Just a little longer. Overhead, the sound of rotors began to echo through the ravine. The helicopter was coming. The helicopter couldn't land in the dense forest, but it hovered low enough over a clearing 200 yards away to lower Dr. Kamala Patel and 2 wildlife technicians with equipment in secured harnesses. Within minutes, they were hiking toward the ravine, moving with the kind of urgent efficiency that spoke of years handling emergency situations. Dr. Patel was a compact woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that missed nothing. She arrived at the edge of the ravine, quickly assessed the situation from above, and began issuing orders before she even started her descent. I need the portable X-ray unit, the surgical kit, and 4 units of plasma down there immediately. Thomas, set up the pulley system for extraction. If we stabilize her, we'll need to lift her out. Rodriguez, I want those cubs secured in carriers before we attempt to move the mother. They're going to be stressed, and stressed cubs can be dangerous. Sarah looked up sharply. They're not dangerous. They came to me for help. Dr. Patel's eyes found Sarah, assessing her in the same quick, thorough way she'd assessed the bear. You're the hiker who found them? Yes. The one who moved the log and climbed down alone? Yes. Dr. Patel studied her for another moment, then nodded. All right, you've earned some trust here. But those cubs are still wild animals, and their mother is in critical condition. When animals are frightened, they're unpredictable. We can't risk injury. Not to them, not to us. She began her descent with the confidence of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Behind her, the 2 technicians, Thomas, a tall man with a red beard, and Rodriguez, a younger woman with observant dark eyes, managed the equipment with practiced coordination. When Dr. Patel reached the bottom, she moved immediately to the mother bear, her hands already working before she'd fully knelt down. She checked the IV line Chen had started, nodded approval, then began a rapid but thorough examination. Sarah watched in silence as the veterinarian's hands moved over the bear's body, pressing, feeling, listening. Dr. Patel's expression remained neutral, professionally detached, but Sarah saw the small tightening around her eyes, the way her jaw clenched slightly when she palpated the bear's abdomen. Talk to me, Dr. Patel said after several minutes of silent examination. Tell me everything that happened, from the moment you found them. Sarah recounted the story, the cub's behavior, finding the mother trapped, moving the log, the time elapsed, everything. Dr. Patel listened while continuing her examination, occasionally asking sharp, specific questions. And when you freed the leg, did she try to move? She collapsed, like all her strength was gone. Did you see her attempt to stand at any point before that? No. I think she'd given up trying. Dr. Patel nodded grimly. She pulled out a portable ultrasound unit and began scanning the bear's abdomen. The small screen showed grainy black and white images that meant nothing to Sarah. But Dr. Patel's frown deepened. What is it? Chen asked. Fluid in the abdominal cavity. Either internal bleeding or organ rupture. Can't tell which, without surgery. The leg is shattered in at least 3 places. Multiple lacerations, advanced infection in the wounds, pneumonia developing in the left lung. She sat back, pulling off her stethoscope. This bear should be dead. The fact that she's still alive is remarkable. Can you save her? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Patel looked at her directly. I don't know. What I do know is that she'll die if we don't try. The question is whether it's more humane to attempt treatment or to end her suffering now. She's not suffering, Sarah said fiercely. She's fighting. There's a difference. Is there? Dr. Patel's tone wasn't cruel, just honest. Sometimes fighting is just prolonging the inevitable. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is let go. Sarah felt something break open inside her chest. All the grief and guilt she'd carried for 3 years suddenly rushing forward. No. No. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is fight alongside them. Sometimes giving up is the easy choice, and fighting is the hard one, but it's the right one. She's held on this long. Her cubs have been waiting, hoping. We can't just quit on her. The ravine went silent except for the sound of the mother bear's labored breathing and the distant calls of the cubs above. Dr. Patel held Sarah's gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of shared experience, shared loss, shared determination. All right, Dr. Patel said finally. We fight, but I need you to understand what that means. We'll have to transport her to the wildlife hospital in Bellingham. That's a 2-hour flight. She'll need emergency surgery that could take 6 to 8 hours. She'll need weeks, possibly months of recovery. And even if she survives all of that, there's no guarantee she'll regain enough function to be released back to the wild. She might spend the rest of her life in captivity. But she'll be alive, Sarah said, and her cubs will have a chance to be with her. The cubs are a separate issue, Rodriguez interjected from where she was setting up equipment. If the mother is in the hospital for weeks, we'll need to hand-rear the cubs. That creates its own problems. Human imprinting, difficulty reintroducing them to the wild. One problem at a time, Dr. Patel said decisively. She turned to Chen and Morrison, who had descended while they were talking. I'm making the call to attempt rescue and treatment. Chen, contact the wildlife hospital in Bellingham. Tell them we're incoming with a critical patient. Adult female black bear. Multiple traumas. Needs immediate surgical intervention. Morrison, help Thomas set up the extraction system. We need a secure harness that won't put pressure on her injuries. Everyone moved at once. The ravine became a flurry of organized chaos. Equipment being unpacked, radio communications crackling, the helicopter pilot being updated on the plan. Through it all, Dr. Patel worked steadily on the mother bear, administering antibiotics, pain medication carefully calibrated to her weakened state, and additional fluids. Sarah stayed by the bear's head, maintaining the gentle contact, continuing to speak in low, soothing tones. The bear's eyes remained half open, watching the activity around her with what seemed like wary hope. I need to splint this leg before we move her, Dr. Patel said. It's going to hurt. She might thrash, might try to bite. Sarah, I need you to move back now. Let me stay, Sarah said. Please, she trusts me. I can keep her calm. Dr. Patel hesitated, then nodded curtly. If she moves to bite, you drop and roll away immediately. Understood? Understood. Dr. Patel and Rodriguez worked together, carefully positioning the shattered leg and applying a temporary splint. The bear made a low, agonized sound that echoed through the ravine and brought immediate distressed cries from the cubs above. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face but kept her voice steady, kept talking. I know, Mama. I know it hurts. But they're helping you. They're making it so you can travel. Soon you'll be somewhere safe. Somewhere they can really fix you. Just hold on. Just keep holding on." The bear's eyes found Sarah's face, and in that moment of shared pain and shared determination, something fundamental shifted in Sarah's heart. This wasn't just about the bear anymore. This wasn't even just about redemption for failing her brother. This was about something more essential, about refusing to accept that some battles were lost before they were fought, about choosing hope when despair would be easier. Thomas called down from above. "Harness is ready. We've got a clear path to the LZ. Medical helicopter is standing by at the clearing." Dr. Patel stood, surveying her work. The bear was now secured with an IV line, her legs splinted, her wounds cleaned and bandaged. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was enough to give her a chance. "All right," Dr. Patel said. "Let's get her out of here. Carefully. Any jostle could cause the internal bleeding to worsen. Thomas, Rodriguez, on my count." They worked the harness under the bear's massive body, securing it with straps designed to distribute weight without putting pressure on her injuries. The mother bear remained still throughout, as if understanding that these humans were her only hope. "What about the cubs?" Sarah asked suddenly. "What happens to them?" "Rodriguez will secure them in carriers and transport them with the mother," Dr. Patel said. "They'll be kept together as much as possible during treatment and recovery. It's better for all of them." Sarah looked up at the edge of the ravine, where two small faces peered down anxiously. Can I help? With the cubs?" Dr. Patel paused in her preparations. "You've already done more than most people would. You should go home, rest. This is going to be a long process and you don't need to—" "Please," Sarah interrupted. "I made them a promise. I told them I'd help their mother, and I want to see it through. I want to make sure they're okay." Something in Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "You can ride to the clearing with us. After that, we'll see. First, let's get Mama Bear to safety." They began the slow, painstaking process of lifting the bear out of the ravine. The pulley system groaned under her weight, but it held. Inch by inch, the mother bear rose toward the surface, secured in the harness, her cubs crying out excitedly as they saw her ascending. Sarah climbed up alongside the equipment, her muscles screaming, her hands raw and bleeding, but her heart surging with something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. When the mother bear finally reached the top of the ravine, the cubs rushed forward immediately. For a moment, Sarah's heart stopped. She feared they might interfere with the delicate equipment, might injure themselves, or cause the bear to fall. But instead, something extraordinary happened. The cubs approached their mother slowly, making soft, chirping sounds. They didn't jump on her or pull at the harness. Instead, they gently pressed their noses against her fur, one on each side of her head, as if reassuring themselves she was real. She was alive. The mother bear's eyes opened fully for the first time since Sarah had found her. She made a low rumbling sound in her chest, not aggressive, but tender, maternal. Her massive head shifted slightly, and she touched her nose to each cub in turn. "Oh my God," Rodriguez whispered. "I've worked with bears for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this." Even Dr. Patel paused, her clinical detachment cracking slightly. "The bond is stronger than I expected." "That's good. It'll give her more reason to fight. But we need to move now. Every minute counts." Thomas and Morrison carefully transferred the mother bear from the harness to a specialized transport stretcher, essentially a reinforced metal frame with thick padding and secure straps. The bear remained docile throughout, though her breathing had grown more labored from the stress of movement. Rodriguez approached the cubs with 2 small carriers. Sarah expected them to bolt, to resist capture now that strange humans were actively trying to contain them. But once again, the cubs surprised everyone. The smaller one, the one that had pressed against Sarah's leg, looked at Sarah as if asking permission. Sarah knelt down. "It's okay," she said softly. "You need to go in the carrier so you can stay with your mama. They're going to help her, but you need to be safe during the trip. Can you do that?" The cub chirped softly, then walked directly into the open carrier. Its sibling hesitated only a moment before following suit. Rodriguez stared in disbelief. That's not normal," she said. "Wild cubs don't just walk into carriers." "These aren't normal circumstances," Sarah replied quietly. The team began the trek to the clearing where the medical helicopter waited. It was slow going. The stretcher carrying the mother bear required 4 people to navigate through the forest, and they had to stop frequently to check her vital signs. Dr. Patel walked alongside, monitoring the IV, adjusting medication, her face tight with concentration. Sarah carried one of the cub carriers. Through the ventilation holes, she could see dark eyes watching her. The cub inside made soft sounds every few minutes, and Sarah found herself responding, talking quietly about where they were going, about how the doctors would help their mother. "You know they can't understand you, right?" Thomas said from behind her, not unkindly. "Maybe not the words," Sarah replied, "but they understand tone. They understand that someone cares." After 20 grueling minutes, they emerged into the clearing. The medical helicopter sat waiting, its rotors already beginning to spin. Sarah had expected a standard emergency helicopter, but this was different. Larger, specifically outfitted for wildlife transport, with equipment she didn't recognize. 2 additional veterinary technicians emerged from the helicopter bringing a specialized gurney. They moved with the same urgent efficiency as Dr. Patel's team, and within minutes, the mother bear was loaded into the helicopter's cargo area, secured on a cushioned platform with monitoring equipment attached. Dr. Patel climbed in beside her patient, immediately checking readouts on a portable monitor. "Heart rate dropping. Blood pressure unstable. We need to move now." Rodriguez loaded the cub carriers into a separate secured area of the helicopter. The cubs cried out when they saw their mother but couldn't reach her. "Wait," Sarah said suddenly. She turned to Dr. Patel. "Can I come? Please. I know I'm not medical personnel. I know I'd just be in the way, but—" "There's no room," Dr. Patel said, not looking up from her monitors. "We're already over capacity." Sarah felt something crumble inside her. After everything, she was going to be left behind. She wouldn't know if the bear survived, wouldn't be there for the cubs, wouldn't— "Actually," Rodriguez interrupted, "Thomas can ride back with the ground team. We could use an extra pair of hands to monitor the cubs during flight. Keep them calm. If you're willing, Ms. Mitchell." Dr. Patel looked up sharply, ready to object, but then her eyes met Sarah's. Whatever she saw there made her reconsider. "Fine, but you follow orders instantly, no questions. If I tell you to move, you move. If I tell you to hold pressure on a wound, you don't hesitate. Clear? Crystal clear. Then get in. We're lifting off in 30 seconds. Or—" Sarah climbed into the helicopter, her heart pounding. The interior was cramped, filled with medical equipment and the smell of antiseptic. She positioned herself near the cub carriers, where she could see both them and the mother bear. The helicopter lifted off with a stomach-dropping lurch. Through the windows, Sarah caught a glimpse of Chen, Morrison, and Thomas, watching from the clearing below. Then they were rising above the tree line, the forest spreading out beneath them like a green ocean. "Oxygen saturation dropping," one of the techs called out. "She's struggling to breathe." Dr. Patel's hands moved rapidly, adjusting equipment, checking the IV line. "She's going into shock. Get me the emergency epinephrine. Now." The tech handed her a syringe. Dr. Patel administered it directly into the IV line, then placed her stethoscope against the bear's chest, listening intently. Seconds stretched into eternity. "Come on," Dr. Patel muttered. "Come on, Mama, fight." The monitor's beeping, which had been growing irregular, suddenly steadied. Dr. Patel exhaled slowly. "Stabilizing. But we need to get her into surgery within the hour, or we're going to lose her." Sarah looked at the cubs. They were pressed against the front of their carriers, watching their mother with wide, frightened eyes. On impulse, Sarah reached out and placed her fingers against the ventilation holes. Immediately, she felt small noses pressing against her fingertips from inside. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, knowing it might not be true, but needing to say it anyway. "Your mama is strong. She's going to fight for you." The flight to Bellingham took 45 minutes that felt like hours. Twice more, the mother bear's vitals became critical, and twice more Dr. Patel managed to stabilize her through a combination of medication and sheer determination. Sarah watched in awe as the veterinarian worked, every movement precise, every decision made in seconds. No hesitation, no panic. This was what it meant to fight for a life, Sarah realized. This was what she wished she'd been able to do for Daniel. Not just call 911 and perform CPR while crying and panicking, but this kind of steady, professional, relentless battle against death. When the helicopter finally landed at the Pacific Northwest Wildlife Hospital, a team of 6 people was waiting. They had the mother bear off the helicopter and into the surgical suite within 3 minutes. Dr. Patel jogged alongside the gurney, rattling off medical information Sarah barely understood. Compound fracture requiring pins and external fixation, suspected splenic rupture, pneumonia in the left lung, severe dehydration despite IV fluids, blood pressure barely sustainable. They disappeared through double doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Sarah stood in the parking lot, holding both cub carriers, suddenly aware that she was covered in dirt and blood, that she'd been going on adrenaline for over 6 hours, that her entire body was shaking. Rodriguez appeared beside her, gently taking one of the carriers. "Come on, let's get these cubs settled, and then you need to sit down before you fall down." The wildlife hospital was larger than Sarah expected, a modern facility with separate wings for different types of animals. Rodriguez led her to the bear rehabilitation area, a climate-controlled space with several large enclosures visible through observation windows. They placed the cubs in a special enclosure designed for orphaned or injured young bears, spacious, with climbing structures, a small pool, and comfortable bedding. When the carriers were opened, the cubs emerged cautiously, exploring their new environment with obvious confusion. "They'll be fed and monitored around the clock," Rodriguez explained. "We'll keep them as wild as possible. Minimal human interaction, no hand feeding unless absolutely necessary. The goal is always to release them back to the wild when they're old enough." "And if their mother survives?" Sarah asked. "Then we'll reunite them as soon as she's stable enough. Mother-reared cubs have a much higher success rate in the wild than hand-reared ones." Sarah pressed her hand against the observation window. The smaller cub, the one that had pressed against her leg in the forest, looked directly at her. For a long moment, they regarded each other through the glass. Then the cub made a soft chirping sound and turned back to its sibling. Rodriguez touched Sarah's shoulder. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up. Then you can wait for news about the mother." She led Sarah to a staff locker room, provided her with scrubs and a towel, showed her where the showers were. Sarah stood under the hot water for 15 minutes, watching dirt and blood swirl down the drain, her muscles gradually unclenching. When she emerged, Rodriguez was waiting with coffee and a sandwich. "Eat, you're running on empty." Sarah ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. Her mind was in that surgical suite, with that bear fighting for her life, with Dr. Patel and her team performing miracles with scalpels and sutures. They sat in a small waiting room. Other staff members came and went, occasionally glancing at Sarah with curiosity. Word had apparently spread about the hiker who'd saved the trapped bear. But no one bothered her, and Sarah was grateful. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Sarah dozed fitfully in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She dreamed of her brother Daniel, but for the first time in 3 years, it wasn't the nightmare of finding him unresponsive. Instead, she dreamed of a day when they were children, hiking with their father in these same mountains. Daniel had found a bird with a broken wing, and their father had shown them how to carefully splint it, how to give it water and keep it warm. They'd taken it to a wildlife rehabilitator, and weeks later, they'd received a letter saying the bird had been successfully released. "We helped it," Daniel had said, his face glowing with joy. "We actually helped save it." Sarah woke to find Dr. Patel standing in front of her. The veterinarian's scrubs were spattered with blood. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, her eyes red-rimmed. But she was smiling. "She made it through surgery," Dr. Patel said. "It's going to be a long recovery and she's not out of danger yet. But she's alive." Sarah burst into tears. "Great," gulping sobs of relief and gratitude. Rodriguez moved to comfort her, but Sarah waved her off, wiping at her eyes. "Can I see her?" she managed to ask. "She's in recovery, still under anesthesia, but yes, come on." Dr. Patel led Sarah down a hallway to a recovery room. Through a window, Sarah could see the mother bear lying on her side on a cushioned platform. Her shattered leg was now held together with external pins and a rigid cast. Tubes and wires connected her to various machines, but her chest was rising and falling in a steady, regular rhythm. "We repaired the splenic rupture," Dr. Patel explained. "Pinned the leg in 3 places. It'll take months to heal, but she should regain full function eventually. Drained the fluid from her lungs and started aggressive antibiotic treatment for the pneumonia and infection. She's stable. Still critical, but stable. Will she walk again? Given time and physical therapy? Yes. Will she walk well enough to survive in the wild? That's the question we'll need to answer in the coming months." Sarah pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on her." Dr. Patel stood beside her, both of them watching the sleeping bear. "You're the one who didn't give up. You're the one who freed her, who fought for her, who made us believe she was worth saving. This victory is as much yours as it is mine." "When will she wake up?" "Another few hours. When she does, I'd like you to be here. If she's going to see a human face first, it should be yours. She trusts you." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. They stood together in silence, watching the bear breathe, watching her live. Sarah didn't leave the hospital. Rodriguez brought her blankets and a pillow, setting her up in a small staff room adjacent to the recovery area. Sarah dozed on and off, but mostly she sat at the observation window, watching the mother bear's chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer. At 2 in the morning, Dr. Patel returned, her hair damp from a shower, wearing fresh scrubs. She carried 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Sarah without a word. They stood together at the window. "You should go home," Dr. Patel said quietly. "Get some real sleep. We'll call you if anything changes." "I can't," Sarah said simply. "I promised those cubs I'd bring their mother back. I need to see her wake up. I need to know she's really going to be okay." Dr. Patel sipped her coffee, studying Sarah's profile. "Rodriguez told me something interesting. She said when you were in the helicopter, when the bear was crashing, you were talking to those cubs like they were your own children, like their survival was the most important thing in the world to you." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She watched the bear breathe, in and out, in and out. "I had a brother," she finally said. "Daniel. He struggled with addiction for years. I was always too busy, always promising I'd visit, always saying I'd be there for him. And then one day, I got a call from his landlord. I found him in his apartment. I tried to save him, but I was too late. I've spent the last 3 years wondering if I could have done something different. If I'd just been there when he needed me." Her voice broke. Dr. Patel placed a hand on her shoulder. "So when those cubs came to me," Sarah continued, "when they begged me to help their mother, I couldn't walk away. I couldn't be too late again." "Sarah," Dr. Patel said gently, "what happened to your brother wasn't your fault. Addiction is a disease, and sometimes people die from diseases despite everyone's best efforts. You can't carry that guilt forever." "I know that in my head," Sarah whispered, "but my heart doesn't believe it. Maybe it never will. But today I was there. I was there when someone needed me, and I didn't walk away. Maybe that doesn't erase what happened with Daniel, but it means something. It has to mean something." Dr. Patel squeezed her shoulder. "It means everything. To that bear, to those cubs, to me and my team. You reminded us why we do this work. Sometimes we get so caught up in protocols and statistics and survival rates that we forget the fundamental truth. Every life is worth fighting for." They stood in companionable silence, watching the bear. At 4:30 in the morning, the mother bear's eyes flickered open. Sarah saw it first. "She's waking up." Dr. Patel moved immediately into the recovery room, checking monitors, adjusting settings. Sarah followed, her heart pounding. The bear's eyes were unfocused, confused, but she was conscious. She tried to move and immediately made a sound of distress. The anesthesia was wearing off, and with it, the pain was returning. "Easy, Mama," Dr. Patel said, administering pain medication through the IV. "You're safe. You're going to hurt for a while, but you're safe." The bear's eyes darted around the unfamiliar room, panic beginning to set in. Her breathing accelerated, the monitors beginning to beep more urgently. "Sarah," Dr. Patel said sharply. "Talk to her. Now." Sarah moved closer, positioning herself where the bear could see her clearly. "Hey, Mama, it's me. It's Sarah. You remember me? I was there in the forest. I'm the one who found you, who freed your leg. You're in a hospital now. The doctors fixed you. Your babies are here too. They're safe. They're being fed. They're waiting for you." The bear's wild eyes found Sarah's face. For a moment, recognition flickered there. Or maybe Sarah just wanted to believe it did. But the bear's breathing slowed slightly, the panic receding. "That's it," Sarah murmured, stepping closer. "You're okay. Everything's okay. You've been through so much and you were so brave. But you made it. You survived." Slowly, carefully, Sarah reached out and placed her hand on the bear's head, just between her ears, the same spot she'd touched in the ravine. The bear's eyes closed briefly, then opened again, watching Sarah with an expression that seemed almost like understanding. "Your cubs need you," Sarah continued softly, "and you're going to get better so you can be with them again. It's going to take time, but you're strong. You proved that already. You held on when you should have died. You fought for them. Now let us help you finish the fight." Dr. Patel watched this interaction with undisguised amazement. "The trust she has in you is remarkable. Interspecies bonding like this is rare, especially with bears." "Maybe she knows I understand what it's like to feel helpless," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe she knows I'll do everything I can to make sure she sees her babies again." Over the following days, Sarah became a fixture at the wildlife hospital. She took a leave of absence from her job, telling her supervisor she had a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. The hospital staff initially tried to maintain professional boundaries, but Sarah's dedication and the bear's obvious positive response to her presence eventually won them over. Dr. Patel allowed Sarah to be present during physical therapy sessions. The mother bear's recovery was agonizingly slow. The first time they tried to get her to stand, 3 days after surgery, she collapsed immediately, the injured leg unable to bear any weight. The sound she made, a low, anguished cry, brought tears to everyone's eyes. But the next day, they tried again. And the day after that. And gradually, painfully, the bear began to regain strength. Sarah was there for every session, offering encouragement, providing the familiar presence that seemed to calm the bear when the pain became overwhelming. She learned to recognize the bear's different vocalizations, the difference between pain and frustration, between fear and exhaustion. The cubs, meanwhile, thrived in their enclosure. They were fed a carefully formulated diet designed to mimic their mother's milk, supplemented with the kinds of foods they'd be learning to forage in the wild. Rodriguez minimized human interaction, using poles and remote feeding systems to maintain their natural wariness of people. But Sarah was allowed to observe through the windows, and occasionally when she stood there, both cubs would approach the glass, pressing their noses against it as if remembering her, as if thanking her. On the 10th day after surgery, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Patel had decided it was time to attempt a reunion, bringing the cubs to see their mother through a secure barrier. It was risky. The mother was still weak, still in pain, and the stress of seeing her cubs without being able to reach them might set back her recovery. But Dr. Patel believed the potential benefits outweighed the risks. "Maternal bonds are powerful motivators," she explained to Sarah. "If she knows her cubs are here, waiting for her, it might accelerate her healing." They brought the cubs in their carriers to a hallway adjacent to the recovery room, separated by a heavy-duty mesh barrier. When the carriers were opened, both cubs emerged cautiously, sniffing the air. Then they caught their mother's scent. Both cubs began crying out immediately, the same desperate, pleading sounds they'd made in the forest. They rushed to the barrier, pressing against it, reaching through the mesh with their small paws. The mother bear, who had been lying quietly on her platform, lifted her head. Her eyes went wide. She tried to stand, forgetting her injured leg, and nearly fell. Dr. Patel moved to intervene, but Sarah stopped her. "Wait, let her try." The mother bear gathered herself, more carefully this time. Using her 3 good legs and the healing 4th for minimal support, she managed to rise. It was clearly agonizing, Her whole body trembled with the effort, but she stood, and then, slowly, she began moving toward the barrier. Each step was a battle. Each movement brought a visible grimace of pain. But she kept going, driven by something stronger than pain, stronger than injury. She reached the barrier and pressed her nose through the mesh. Her cubs went wild with joy, chirping and crying, licking at her face through the openings, touching her with their paws. The mother bear made a sound Sarah had never heard before, a deep, rumbling vocalization that seemed to come from the very core of her being. It was triumph and relief and love all at once. "Mama loves you," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She never stopped fighting for you." Dr. Patel was openly crying too. Rodriguez, watching from the doorway, wiped at her eyes. Even the veterinary technicians monitoring the equipment had stopped to watch, transfixed by the reunion. The bears stayed at the barrier for 20 minutes before Dr. Patel gently intervened. "We need to get Mama Bear back to her platform. She's exerted herself enough for today." The cubs cried out in protest as they were guided back into their carriers, and the mother bear tried to follow them, but her strength was spent. Sarah helped Dr. Patel guide her back to the cushioned platform, where she collapsed with a heavy sigh. But as Sarah placed her hand on the bear's head one more time, she felt something different. Not just exhaustion, not just pain, hope. The bear had seen her cubs. She knew they were alive, healthy, waiting for her. And now she had a reason to endure the painful therapy, the long recovery, the difficult journey ahead. That night, Sarah sat in the observation room, watching the mother bear sleep. Dr. Patel found her there, as she often did during late rounds. "You know," the veterinarian said, settling into the chair beside Sarah, "in 3 decades of wildlife medicine, I've seen a lot of remarkable things. But what you've done here, what you've created, it's something special. That bear should have died in that ravine. Those cubs should have been orphaned. Instead, they all have a chance at life because you refuse to accept the easy answer." "I just did what anyone would do," Sarah said. "No," Dr. Patel corrected gently. "Most people would have called for help and left. Most people wouldn't have climbed down alone, wouldn't have freed that log, wouldn't have stayed to fight. You did something extraordinary, Sarah. And in the process, I think maybe you saved yourself too." Sarah looked at her hands, still scratched and bruised from the ravine, from the rescue, from the fight to save a life. "Maybe I did," she said softly. "I couldn't save my brother, but I could save her. And maybe that means something. Maybe it means I don't have to carry that guilt forever." "Daniel would be proud of you," Dr. Patel said. "I didn't know him, but I know that if my sister did something this brave, this compassionate, I'd be proud. And I think, wherever he is, he's proud too." Sarah nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in her throat. They sat together in silence, watching the bear breathe. Steady, strong, alive, healing. 4 months passed like a dream wrapped in determination. The winter came early to Washington State that year, bringing snow that blanketed the mountains in pristine white. Sarah watched the seasons change from the observation windows of the Wildlife Hospital, where she had become as much a part of the staff as any employee. She had officially relocated, taking a remote position with her company and renting a small apartment 20 minutes from the facility. Every morning she arrived before dawn. Every evening she stayed until the last lights dimmed. She was there for every physical therapy session, every small victory, every setback. And there were setbacks. 3 weeks after surgery, the mother bear developed a secondary infection that required additional antibiotics and nearly derailed her recovery. 5 weeks in, she re-injured the healing leg during a therapy session, setting her progress back by nearly 2 weeks. There were days when the bear seemed to give up, refusing to stand, refusing to engage, the pain and exhaustion overwhelming her will to fight. On those days, Sarah would sit beside her, always with the barrier between them, always safe but close, and talk. She talked about the cubs, about the forest waiting for them, about freedom and family and the strength that comes from refusing to surrender. And somehow the bear always found the will to try again. The cubs grew stronger too. They doubled in size. their fur thickening for winter, their personalities emerging. The smaller one, Sarah had started calling him Scout in her mind, though she never said it aloud, was bold and curious, always the first to try new foods or explore new additions to their enclosure. The larger one, Guardian, Sarah thought, was more cautious, more watchful, always keeping an eye on his sibling. Rodriguez worked tirelessly to keep them wild, minimizing human contact, teaching them to forage and climb, and behave like the bears they needed to become. But twice a week, the cubs were brought to see their mother through the barrier, and those reunions became the highlight of everyone's schedule. The bears would press against the mesh, touching noses, vocalizing in ways that needed no translation. The mother's determination always visibly strengthened after these visits. She would work harder in therapy, push through more pain, take more steps. By February, she was walking without assistance. By March, she could run short distances. By April, Dr. Patel began discussing release protocols. Her leg has healed remarkably well, the veterinarian explained during a meeting with Sarah and the senior staff. She has about 85% function, enough to hunt, climb, defend herself and her cubs. The question is whether she can survive a full year in the wild, teaching her cubs everything they need to know. She can, Sarah said with absolute conviction. She's the strongest creature I've ever known. Dr. Patel smiled. I believe you're right, but we need to do this carefully. We'll use a soft release protocol. Take them back to the area where you found them. Monitor them remotely for the first few months. Provide supplemental feeding if necessary. If she struggles, we can always bring them back. She won't struggle, Sarah said. She's ready. They're all ready. The release was scheduled for late April, when the forest would be coming alive with spring, when food would be abundant and the weather mild. The location was carefully chosen, the same general area where Sarah had found them, but far enough from hiking trails to minimize human contact. On the morning of the release, Sarah woke before sunrise. She dressed carefully, choosing practical hiking clothes, and drove to the hospital one last time. The transport team was already there, preparing the specialized vehicle that would carry the bears to their freedom. Dr. Patel found Sarah standing at the observation window looking at the mother bear one last time. How are you feeling? The veterinarian asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if she gets hurt again? What if... Sarah, Dr. Patel interrupted gently. You can't protect her forever. That's not how this works. Wild animals belong in the wild. We've given her every tool she needs to survive. Now we have to trust her to do what bears have done for millions of years. I know, I'm going to miss them. You can visit the monitoring station. Check the camera feeds. We'll track them for at least a year. Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. Will she remember me? Will she remember what happened? Bears have excellent memories, Dr. Patel said. She'll remember. Whether she understands the full scope of what you did for her, who can say? But I believe, in whatever way bears understand such things, she knows you saved her life. The transport took 3 hours, winding through mountain roads to a remote access point. Sarah rode in the vehicle with Dr. Patel, Rodriguez, and 2 other staff members. The bears traveled in specialized transport containers, comfortable, climate-controlled, designed to minimize stress. When they finally stopped, deep in the Cascade Wilderness, the spring morning was perfect. Sunlight filtered through new leaves. Birds sang from every branch. The air smelled of pine and earth and possibility. They unloaded the containers and positioned them at the edge of a small clearing, facing the forest. Dr. Patel checked the mother bear's tracking collar one final time, a lightweight device that would transmit her location and basic vitals for the next year. Everyone ready? Dr. Patel asked. Sarah took a deep breath. Ready. They opened the mother bear's container first. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the bear emerged slowly, cautiously, testing her healed leg on natural ground for the first time in months. She took one step, then another, then paused to sniff the air. The cub's container was opened next. They tumbled out with the fearless energy of youth, immediately beginning to explore. But when their mother made a soft sound, they rushed to her side, pressing against her legs. The mother bear looked back once, directly at Sarah. Their eyes met across the clearing, and Sarah felt something pass between them. Not words, not even thoughts exactly, just recognition, gratitude, connection. "Thank you for fighting," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for showing me how." The bear turned away and began walking into the forest, her cubs following close behind. Within moments, they were shadows among the trees. Within minutes, they had disappeared completely. Sarah stood there long after they were gone, tears running freely down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, of completion, of a promise finally kept. Dr. Patel put an arm around her shoulders. "You did it, Sarah. You saved them." "We did it," Sarah corrected. "All of us. Together." 6 months later, Sarah stood at her brother's grave for the first time since the funeral. She had avoided it for 3 years, unable to face the physical evidence of her failure. But today felt different. Today, she had something to tell him. "Hey, Danny," she said softly, kneeling to place fresh flowers on the headstone. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I'm sorry for a lot of things, but I want to tell you about something that happened." She told him the whole story. The bears, the rescue, the months of recovery, the release. She told him about the guilt she'd been carrying, and how saving that bear family had somehow helped her begin to forgive herself. "I know I can't change what happened with you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know I can't go back and be there when you needed me. But I learned something, Danny. I learned that every day gives us a chance to show up for someone, to choose courage over comfort, to fight for life even when the odds seem impossible." She touched the cold stone, imagining she could feel her brother's presence. "The mama bear and her cubs are thriving. Dr. Patel sends me updates from the monitoring station. The cubs are learning to fish, to forage, to be wild. Their mother is teaching them everything they need to know. They're going to make it, Danny. Against all odds, they're going to make it." Sarah stood, wiping her eyes. "I'm going to make it too. I'm going to keep showing up, keep fighting, keep choosing hope, because that's what you would have wanted for me. That's what those bears taught me." She walked back to her car, where her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Patel. A photo attachment showed the mother bear and her 2 cubs, now nearly full-grown, standing at the edge of a river, the late afternoon sun turning their fur golden. The mother bear was looking directly at the camera, and Sarah could have sworn she was smiling. Sarah forwarded the photo to the group chat she shared with the rescue team, adding a simple message: "They're home." Within seconds, responses flooded in. Heart emojis from Rodriguez, a thumbs up from Morrison, a simple "beautiful" from Chen, and from Dr. Patel: "We did good work, Sarah. We saved a family." Sarah started her car and began the drive back to Seattle. Tomorrow she would return to her regular life, her job, her apartment, her routines, but she would carry this experience with her forever. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, even when we feel powerless and broken, we have the capacity to save something precious. Sometimes, Sarah thought, we set out to rescue others and end up rescuing ourselves. She thought about the twin cubs who had begged her to save their mother, who had trusted a human stranger with their most desperate need. She thought about the mother bear who had refused to die, who had held on through unimaginable pain because her children needed her. And she thought about her own journey, from grief and guilt to purpose and peace. The bears had given her that gift, the chance to show up when it mattered, the opportunity to fight for something worth saving, the reminder that every life has value, every bond is sacred, and every act of compassion ripples outward in ways we can't always measure. As Sarah drove through the mountains, the same mountains where this story began, she rolled down her window and breathed in the crisp, pine-scented air. She was alive. The bears were alive. And somehow in the space between tragedy and triumph, she had found a way to forgive herself. That was enough. That was everything. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever witnessed or lived something like this.